The world isn't what's outside the walls of the church. The world, or worldliness, the Bible talks about, is a disposition and a spirit where I want everything set up to work in my direction, and I applaud it. I want to give you this morning 3 keys to moving toward what you were created for, because the letter of Ephesians is a letter about identity and purpose. And so I want to give you 3 keys from what Paul gives us here in Ephesians chapter 2 about how you can move toward what you were created for. You ready? Taking notes. Number 1, don't waste your time on dead ends. Don't waste your time on dead ends. Paul gives us 2 dead ends in Ephesians chapter 2. He starts off in verse 1 and he says, as for you, you were dead, uses the word, in your transgressions and your sins. So what's the first dead end? The first dead end is sin. Paul calls it transgressions. It's a unique word. In the Lord's Prayer, Jesus uses this word, and forgive us often it's translated trespasses. When I was growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, in my elementary years, we lived at the T of a neighborhood, and we were at the end of a street, and then right on the corner of that street with a row of bushes was an older lady. Now, I recognize now she was probably my age now, but then she was old. And she had in her yard, the yard was manicured, there were plants out, it was clearly the grass was always green. And she had a sign out front that said, no trespassing. And all the kids in the neighborhood knew that you did not go under her yard, because what would happen if you went into her yard is she would come out. She would come out at you, this old crotchety lady. And she would come out and yell at you. And so what would happen is sometimes when we were playing and riding our bikes, and we would accidentally trespass. We would fall into her yard, and then we would jump up and we would go away. But there were other times. Sometimes. I'm not saying it was me, but it was other kids in the neighborhood. Out of spite, would go into her yard. Now, I know you never do anything like that. I've never done anything like that. I don't even know what we're talking about right now. But what were we doing? We were violating someone's boundaries. We were spending our time worked up over somebody else's issues. We were trespassing. We were transgressing. Then Paul says, and he gives another word. He says, your transgressions and your sins. It's a word from archery that's used there, hamartia. It literally means to miss the target. In other words, you miss what God intends for your life. You miss that you were made to love God and to love your neighbor. You miss that you were made to be a person of the truth. You miss that you were meant to be someone good. Now, there's a reality we wrestle with. Maybe, again, it's not me, you. We want other people to be good, but rarely do we want to do the work of becoming good ourselves. Do you ever wrestle with that? It's kind of the human condition. I need you to be what I need, but I don't really want to spend any time being what you need. And so when we sin, when we miss, we spend time moving away from God and people. Now, why does Paul use this word dead? Why is sin a dead end? Well, when you transgress, when you miss, what happens is it kills your humanity and the humanity of the people around you. It kills their hearts and yours. Are we okay, Brian? Okay, sound good. Now, Paul might be seeming a bit heavy. You might say, well, Paul, this is kind of a Debbie Downer. Why does he say this? He even ratchets it up. And in verse 3, and he says, all of us at one time were gratifying what he calls the cravings of our flesh. Now, let's pause for a second and use these words that Paul is giving us and try to, without any preconceived notions. Let's just imagine you just heard this for the first time. What's he talking about? When Paul uses this phrase, the flesh, he's talking about the path of least resistance. I always want to go the path of least resistance. And anybody who's honest about their life, they will tell you they are troubled by their flesh. I stepped onto the scale in our bathroom this week, And I didn't like what I saw. Has anybody else ever had that problem? I looked at it, and I didn't at that moment like my flesh. What does that mean? I didn't like my body? Well, I don't know. More so, I didn't like my inability to control it. And then he says, so what happens is we follow its desires and thoughts. It's almost like it takes on a life of its own. It's like it's a canoe going down a river, and you almost can't help it. And then he uses this phrase that just seems like, what are you saying here, Paul? He says, we're by nature, literally the language reads, of wrath. The translators in the NIV inserted the word deserving of wrath. And you may read that and go, wait, Paul, tone it down, buddy. What are you saying here? By nature, we're of wrath, we're under wrath. What are you talking about? I want to suggest to you that Paul is not condemning us. He's making an observation. So this is an observation, not condemnation. And what he's saying is, when we transgress, when we trespass, when we miss, when we move away from God and people, what we do is we create around us a world of frustration and anger and disappointment and missed expectations, and we perpetuate something. It's like we put something into the water system and we perpetuate something, and it's almost like it can't not happen. In one of his other letters, Galatians, Paul has this list. In Galatians chapter 5, he talks about what he calls the works of the flesh, what happens from me. And they're obvious. Let me give it to you in a list form. Sexual immorality, moral impurity, promiscuity, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambition, dissension, faction, envy, drunkenness, carousing, anything similar. Here's what he's saying. Just suppose that this list of things, these works of the flesh, what comes out of me when I'm focused on me, become the primary driver of my life. My life becomes about doing what I want, and I just follow the stream of what I want. Paul is saying the result is always some form of anger and wrath, because what I want conflicts with what you want, and there is this crash. And instead of you and I moving down the road of life together, like we're traveling arm in arm, we become like a demolition derby running into each other. Now, Paul's not trying to label, and Paul's not trying to judge. Paul's trying to paint a picture of reality and say, this is what it's like. Because when you say, I have to get myself, and that's all you focus on, then I have to put down yourself because you are a threat to me. Because wrath is the opposite of love. And, if the world were just fair, can we posit this for a second? If the world were just fair, wouldn't it be true that you and I earn the wrath that we get? Ooh. Do you see why that's a dead-end road to sin? Second dead-end road, verse 2, it's what everybody is doing, also known as, the Bible calls it, this category, the world. Verse 2, you previously walked according to the ways of this world, according to the ruler of the power of the air, the spirit at work in those who are disobedient. So here's what happens. You and I are wrestling with our flesh. We maybe don't like what we see, and we want certain things. And so what happens is your flesh, my flesh, our flesh together gets codified into the way that the world operates. If you grew up in church, you've heard that phrase, worldly. And sometimes what we do is we say, well, the church is this safe zone, like we're exempted from all of the forces that the rest of the world has. And so here in this space, we're outside of the world. You come in here and you're away from the world. That's not what the Bible is talking about. The world isn't what's outside the walls of the church. The world, or worldliness, the Bible talks about, is a disposition and a spirit where I want everything set up to work in my direction, and I applaud it. And so here's what happens. We set up what Leslie Newbegin calls plausibility structures to go along with what we want. What is a plausibility structure, Scott? A plausibility structure is, you could think of it like a mental map of your neighborhood. You know how you get in your neighborhood, or you go for a walk in your neighborhood and you don't know the names of the streets? And you try to tell someone where to go, And you're like, you just know, I turn right here at the house that's blue, and then I turn left at the big tree, and you don't know, but you just have this mental map in your mind about how the world works, how your neighborhood works, and that's what a plausibility structure is. And so you set up this mental map, this shared mental map about how it is that the world works. So here's a plausibility structure in our world that keeps us stuck. In our day, we have what I would call a truth problem. In other words, what we say about when anyone tries to say they have the truth or they're telling the truth is we just make an assumption. We make an assumption that anytime someone says, I'm telling the truth, or my religion is the correct religion, or you need to do this, we just assume that always that is a power play. What they're trying to do is gain power. And then we have a guilt problem. In our day, we don't really wrestle with guilt. Older generations had a lot of guilt, or wrestled with a lot of guilt, or felt guilty. And younger generations today, it's just like, it doesn't really, guilt? What would I be guilty for? And then we have a meaning problem. We like, you read the Bible and you hear what I'm saying here today, and you say, well, that's nice. That's your interpretation. How do we know that's the accurate one? And what we say is there's no meanings in these texts like the Bible, or in a political text like the Constitution. And so what we think in our plausibility structure, our mental map about the world around us, is that we just see through everything. We see that this person's really, we see through everything. I'll just give you a couple examples. Think about politics. I'm not trying to be political when I say this. I'm just trying to show you an example. So when someone steps up from whatever political persuasion, they make a claim about something, everybody, especially people on the other side, go, well, they're just trying to gain power. They're not telling the truth. And then when somebody does something absolutely crazy, have you noticed that nobody is ever guilty for anything anymore? They're like, no apology. I just did it. And so you can't question anybody. You can't say, well, who are you to say that? Because you're just forcing your interpretation on things. And so here's what happens is you have no idea who to trust. And if you wonder why it seems like the bonds in our culture are disintegrating, this is because of the plausibility restructure we have about truth and meaning and guilt. And so the result is that we begin to question reality itself. I love C.S. Lewis. And this is what he said. This was 50 plus years ago. If you see through everything, then everything is transparent. But a wholly transparent world is an invisible world. To see through all things is the same as not to see. Whew. I'll give you another example. It makes us question something basic like love. So in our day, the way we've kind of defined love is something like, just let me be. Just leave me alone, let me be. Let me be me. I gotta do me. I gotta live my truth. Don't try to guilt me because I don't need any guilt. I don't need your negativity in my life. Who are you to tell me any different? Just let me be me. And so we end up thinking love is ultimately about us. Now, here's what we know intuitively, I want to suggest. We know that's actually not the case. Love in the end is not just about us. Here's I think a better definition of what love actually is. It's let me be for you. Jesus said I'm to love my neighbor as I love myself. So both of those are involved, right? Love doesn't start with me. It may begin in part inside of me, but it doesn't end with me. Love ends with you. Begins inside of me, but ends with you. And how you create an environment of love and a world of love is you have to have a bigger definition of love. Now, you intuitively know this is true. Tell me how parenting would go if, as a parent, you just said to your kids over and over again, just let me be. Tell me how it would go for you at work, and maybe you work with someone or for someone like this, who just constantly is saying, just let me be, man. Why you gotta bother me? Tell me how it would work in a friendship if the friendship was always you saying to the other person, hey, just let me be. Or tell me how a marriage works when each of you are just trying to say, hey, let me be. But tell me how it works in parenting if you say as a parent to your child, hey, I'm here, let me be for you. Or tell me how it works when you go to work and you're working with someone, you're trying to get along, you're trying to make something work, and what you communicate with your life and with your words is, hey, let me be for you. Or tell me how it works when you're in a friendship or you're inside of a marriage, and what you communicate is, hey, let me be for you. We intuitively know that's what love actually is. But our plausibility structure makes it something else. And these are dead ends. Dead ends. They move you away from people. They make you question reality. They make you think love itself is up for grabs. Paul even says this whole thing is aided by spiritual powers. And by the way, verse 3, he says, now listen, don't think this is someone else's problem. All of us did this at one time. See, we have to see the dead ends. We have to recognize their dead end.